This is the Become the Lion podcast. If you are aiming to become the top in your industry, not second, not above average, the top, then you have come to the right place. Become the Lion will provide you with weekly insights and motivation needed from our guests on how to escape the common herd that society lives in. If you're looking to change your life, then get ready. Welcome to Become the Lion.
Hi, this is Trevor Nicholas from Become the Lion. Today on the show, we have Justin Stenstrom. Justin is an acclaimed life coach, author, and entrepreneur. He has been in Maxim, the Huffington Post, Lifehack, as well as others. Justin, welcome to Become the Lion.
Hey, Trevor. Thanks so much for having me, man. I'm excited.
Justin, for our audience out there who's listening right now, do you mind telling them how you got started as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, it started for me. My whole self-help journey started about 10 years ago with problems like depression, anxiety, panic attacks, no confidence, no dating life, etc. And it took a few years to really figure these areas out. Like I kind of knocked them off one by one. But flash forward about 3-4 years later, after kind of figuring these problems out by, doing various techniques and strategies and pushing myself out of my comfort zone, etc., things like that, I was able to really get good at this stuff, communicating with other people, having confidence, having social skills, being good with women, like talking to women, attracting women. And so I started helping other guys out who were having a lot of the similar problems that I had, some of the same areas and challenges that I had in the past, and just slowly kind of, started off just dabbling with, meetup groups, going to online forums, hanging out with people, going to different events and conferences and meeting people, and, kind of slowly built up a list, a clientele of people I was working with. And from that point forward, just kind of launched my first website, just probably, again, now, let's see, about 4 or 5 years ago. And then from that point, initially it was a dating and confidence website, but after that it kind of grew into what I have now, which is the Elite Man magazine.com website, which is where we cover everything under the sun, like self-help related for men.
And while you were starting Elite Man magazine, did you have another job or did you just jump full right into it?
I had a bartending gig I would do, so actually it was like the perfect sort of side job to allow me to put in as much work as possible into the business. Like I'd only work a couple nights a week and make a few $100, and it was like, yeah, I can live on this. It's like, $400 a week or so I was doing through bartending, $300-400 a week and through bartending, and it was like, all right, this allows me the perfect amount of time, like as much an amount of time as necessary. All the other hours during the week was dedicated to starting the magazine, which I think a lot of people don't get to have. So I was pretty fortunate in that.
And while you were building the Elite Man magazine, what are some of the challenges that you've had to overcome?
I mean, there's been so many challenges, Trevor. Like everything you can think of as far as like going wrong with a business has happened to me. Building your audience is one of the biggest things at first. Like building people who are actually going to listen to you is one thing, to go to meetup groups and events and stuff and get to connect with people. It's another thing to actually have people, a large amount of people following your work and following, your blog or the articles you put up or even the podcast when you launch a new podcast. It takes time to build an audience up, and that was one of the first biggest challenges I had to endure, and it took me probably a good year, maybe year and a half before I started building like a consistent base of people who followed and listened to my work. But then there's other things down the road, like actually getting customers out of the people that are listening to you. That's kind of another transition. It's like, you have all these people listening to you. Now you have some products. Now you have your coaching that you're doing. But how many of those people are actually converting into that? And so that was another challenge, a hurdle we had to overcome, about a year or so after that, or, in the 6 months or 2 years after getting a base of people. And it was like, all these things, like I said, had steady growth along the entire process, but it was like so many things that I tried that didn't work. And it was kind of like, little failures, I guess you would call them along the way. But it's like you look at these failures in a different perspective. It's like you learn something from all the little things that maybe don't work out well for you at first. And so they're all experiences. So
while you were building the company and specifically building your audience, how did you not get discouraged? Or, like, what caused you to not give up during that process?
It's just something inside me I've always had. And, back when I was facing problems, like the worst problems you can face with anxiety and depression and getting 3 to 4 panic attacks a week, there's always been something inside me. And again, I don't want to say this like I'm unique and it's like something that's only something within me, but I honestly believe that 99.9% of your listeners right now have this same thing, and it's the ability, the drive, there's something inside you that has this willpower to succeed and to not fail no matter what you're doing. So even if you're facing your deepest, darkest moments, like severe depression, like I was suicidal at one point for a while, and it was pretty much the lowest of lows you can get to. But there was still something deep inside me that didn't want to give up, and I carried this with me. And again, other guys have this. All your listeners have this. It's like you just got to search for it if you can't really see it. And sometimes it's buried deep within all the insecurities you have and all the hardships you faced, but it's still in there somewhere. And I think I've always carried this with me. And even when I was failing and having all these times, like months and months where I'd go without like making a sale or without making any money on the business, I still had the drive inside me to keep going because I knew it would eventually work out if I kept putting in the work.
And I know how you mentioned you have anxiety and depression. How come you didn't let that define you? How did you rise above that?
The anxiety and the panic attacks, that was it was one of the kind of biggest struggles I ever had to face. And I have a whole process I use for that, but when I talk about that, it's usually about like 10 steps that I talk about. I'll share with you like one really profound one, I guess, that your listeners can take away. So if you're facing anxiety, if you're facing panic attacks, the best way I've found, I've discovered to end this, or any type of fear for that matter, say, is there's you have fears in life no matter what you do. You have anxiety creep up, and it's actually a good thing. It can actually, we have it for a reason. If you're facing down a lion in the jungle, or you're about to fall off a cliff, or you're about to get hit by a car, whatever it is, like you have a jolt of like anxiety through you and it triggers you to make action, to do something to save your life, and that's normal. Those things happen, but a lot of people are overstressed, over anxious all the time, and they have too much of it. And for ordinary, like day-to-day things, you can use this technique to end your anxiety and end panic when it creeps up in you. So for someone who's had a panic attack, I'm going to share a quick little 3-step process for completely wiping it out, if that's cool, Trevor.
Yeah, no, I think our audience would love that.
All right. So for anyone who's getting a panic attack, or anyone who's ever had one, just how crippling it can be. So you're thinking about something and you're kind of worrying about the future, projecting yourself into the future, and all these feelings of anxiety, of terror, of failure, of messing up creep into your head. And then the next thing you know, you get all these sensations throughout your body. You might get like sweaty palms. You might get butterflies in your stomach. You might get, a pounding chest. You might have a feeling of cold rush through your body, or maybe your legs start to shake. These are all different sensations that go along with the panic attack, and some people have them all, some people have a couple of them. But whatever it is, when you're about to get a panic attack, what you want to do is you don't want to. What typically happens is people want to kind of ignore all these sensations because they're obviously not good things. They're kind of really bad, negative sensations that are going on, and so the first step in this little panic attack solution is to do nothing. It's actually just to sit back and observe what's happening. So you don't want to react. You don't want to ignore, suppress, or try to hide or run from the feelings you're getting. Just sit back and observe them. Just see what's going on, kind of take them all in, and do nothing like reactive. That's step number one. The second step is actually this is where it gets counterintuitive. You actually want to welcome them in. Like you literally go have this dialogue in your head and welcome all the feelings of fear, terror, panic in. Just say welcome back fear, welcome back feelings of messing up, or feelings of falling flat on my face, or failure, or welcome back pounding chest, like this feeling like I'm going to get a heart attack, or welcome back these butterflies in my stomach that are making me sick, or this feeling of just utter coldness that has rushed through my body. You literally go through all the sensations you're having and welcome them in. And the third and most empowering yet counterintuitive step is to actually ask for more of these. So you literally like yell out. You can scream sort of in the top of your lungs, or have this voice in your head that's like an empowering voice. You know, the dialogue you're having in your head, and just say, give me more of this panic, give me more of these fears, give me more of these thoughts of failure, these butterflies in my stomach, this pounding chest that feels like I'm going to have a heart attack, this coldness, this, you know, sweaty palms, these shaky legs. You go through every single sensation that's causing you fear, terror, panic, and ask for more of it. And what happens, Trevor, is that within just a couple of moments, the fear subsides. It totally dissipates. What you're doing here is you're basically exposing all the sensations that have been concocted in your mind, and expose them to the light. And what happens when you expose them to the light is they dissipate. FDR said it best himself. He said there's nothing to fear but fear itself. And it couldn't be more applicable than in a time when you're getting like a panic attack or a severe anxiety attack.
I like how you really talked about that. I don't know if you've ever heard of the book. I'm not sure who wrote it, but it's called The Flinch. And it's like that split second between deciding, you know when like you see when you want to do something, but you have that feeling of fear inside yourself, and you have that split second, or the anxiety inside yourself, and you have the split second between, am I gonna go after what I'm scared of, or am I gonna let that hold me back? And it seems like you really didn't let that hold you back, and you just went for it.
Yeah, it wasn't something that came natural to me either, and I think anyone who tries this little technique, it's not going to come natural either, because I think your first instinct again is to want to hide, or maybe try to ignore it, pretend like it's not really happening to you, and it'll go away. And you know what? Sometimes in a hit or miss situation, like you do these things and it'll work. Sometimes you'll ignore it and it'll kind of like go away on its own, or maybe you pretend like it's not really there, and you switch your mind off into something else, maybe do a different activity, and it'll go away. Like you'll get lucky. But the best way I found is to literally just take one. As soon as it happens, it's like you have that kind of choice, like you just said. You can either face it head on, or you can kind of like run from it or avoid it. And it's like the best way I found is to just take it head on and like go do battle with it. As much as it's going to scare the crap out of you, you're going to be better off doing this way head on. It's going to be so much more empowering, and you can take this and kind of carry it with anything that you face.
And I want to talk to you. You started the Elite Man magazine, but what is your definition of an elite man?
Yeah, I get this question all the time, man. I love it. So anyone who kind of hears the Elite Man name, well, some people kind of know what I stand for anyways when they come across it. But someone who's just new, they may have the thought of like, oh, well, what's this kind of Elite Man thing all about? Is it like, like an elitism type of thing? Like, you guys are better than other men, or like, you're trying to be like, comparing yourself to other guys and being like better than them, like that whole elitism sort of stigma that goes along with it. But it's totally not that at all. It's actually the complete opposite, in my opinion, in my view. So being an elite man to me is literally just being the best version of yourself every single day. So working in some capacity to push yourself into being a better man every single day. It's not about competing with other people. It's not about, like you have to be the best at what you do, or, the elite type of guy. It's literally just elite in this stance is just the best version of yourself. So elite equals best to me, and being the best man you can be is what the elite man is all about.
And that's an important point where you brought up about focusing on yourself, because especially with social media and the way the world is today, sometimes people put their validation on what other people think of them, when it really only matters what you think of yourself.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. We can all get caught up in kind of that superficial type of thing with social media. We're checking our likes all the time, checking our comments. If we don't have a post that doesn't do good, we're kind of disappointed. It's something we kind of all have to face, and I think we all go through. But it's really about just being grounded and kind of doing your best to get past that kind of thing. Like, I mean, that was something I used to worry about, especially when I first started off with like so on social media, especially with like the Elite Man magazine page, and on Twitter with my account, when I'd post something up and I wouldn't get like any likes initially or any follows or whatever. And it's like, you just kind of realize that those things are really meaningless, and as long as you're kind of like putting up great content, putting up great advice and tips for people to kind of get from, that's going to come eventually. Like, I mean, I don't know. It's just kind of superficial to me, and the more you focus on it, the less it's going to, the more it's going to take away from what you're actually trying to do.
I know you've started a podcast called the Elite Man Podcast, and you've interviewed people like Robert Greene and Kevin Harrington, but why did you decide to start the podcast?
I started the podcast, actually, man, just a couple, probably 2.5 years ago now, but I started it initially just because I've been listening to guys like Pat Flynn and Tim Ferriss, Joe Rogan, some of those guys for a while, and I just thought it was so cool what they were doing. I loved their podcast. I love what they were doing. I remember I'd go out and, like, Trevor, you're from where I'm from, in Massachusetts. I remember I'd go out and the one year, I think it was either the year before I started the podcast or the year I ended up starting the podcast. We had really bad snow that year, and it was like I'd always go out and just shovel, and I'd have podcast after podcast on my earbuds listening to them as I was shoveling. And I did this for like a few weeks in a row straight, and it was like, you know what, and this was literally around the same time I'd started the magazine, or like a year after I started the magazine. And I was like, you know what, I think this is a great thing for me to test out, and I want to see how it goes, because I love listening to these guys. I think I can kind of do a similar thing, with interviewing people and stuff. And I also thought that in the back of my mind it'd be a great way to connect with other people, some of these guests that were coming on the show. Because I heard, I think from maybe Pat Flynn, about how much it had helped build his network online and his community of people he's friends with and he interacts with. So I figured I'd give it a shot, maybe give it a few episodes, 5-10 episodes, see how it goes. If I don't like it, I can always just kind of wash it or tack it up as something that kind of didn't work for me, like so many other things that had already failed at that time.
And for your brand, how have you been able to monetize it?
So we do a few things now. We have the primary source of monetization is the coaching that we do. So it's basically Skype coaching. 99% of it's Skype coaching, virtual coaching, and we'll cover dating advice, we'll cover confidence advice, we'll cover finding your purpose as a man and kind of crushing your fears, like going after what you want. And then we have some other options, like we do advertisements, not on the podcast, but on the website. Probably on the podcast soon, but I haven't really flipped over to that yet. And then we have the conference that we run every year, the annual Elite Man Conference, and we sell tickets to that. So we're currently working on a few programs as well, some online courses that should be out in the next probably 6 months or so. But those are the three things that we do right now.
And I know you've written a book called Giving Shy Guys Game, and do you mind talking about that for our audience?
Yeah, so that was the first book I came out with, and again, I started in this whole space as a dating coach, and that was the first thing I came up with. It was literally just all of my best dating advice and confidence tips. There's a lot of confidence tips in that book, just in one book. I put all my best advice in that book, and that was actually the first name of the blog I came out with too. It was givingshyguysgame.com, which now redirects to Elite Man. But yeah, I mean that was started off as a dating advice thing, and just has some really, really solid information. Even now, kind of looking back at it, has some really top advice in it, and that's kind of what I started with. I kick myself kind of now thinking about the name, because to me it's just like kind of a goofy name, but it's like, you know what, at the time that's what it was. It helped a ton of guys, and it did stick out with the whole shy guy niche, and and that's exactly who I was. I was a shy guy, but I mean, as much as I kick myself kind of in the butt for having the name now, it's like, yeah, I kind of don't really love that name. It's a phenomenal book, and the advice in it is really solid even still.
And what was that experience like for yourself, going from a shy guy to all the way to becoming a dating coach?
Like I said, that was a whole process. Took years. Took good 3-4 years to get from the position of being a completely shy guy, a guy with no friends, no dating life, no confidence, and then also having these problems with depression and anxiety, which just added to the whole thing. But the whole process of me getting from that point to being like really good at talking to women, at having conversations, at connecting with people, socializing, that whole process, I mean, that's an entire book right there. But it was basically just putting myself out of my comfort zone, doing things new that I hadn't done before. Like I took a dance class, I took an acting class, I put myself around people who wanted the same things as me. I definitely pushed myself way out of my comfort zone. I got a job at a grocery store too back then for a couple of years, and I was a bagger, and I would talk to literally everybody who came through the line, like have a small little conversation with every person that came through the line. I'd chat up everybody in the store, like all the cashiers, the girls working. You know, it was awesome working with them back then. I'd walk around the store actually and just make friends with everybody who worked there. So like the bread guy, the produce lady, the meat guy, the fish guy, the guy stocking the aisles, the ladies at the service desk, everybody in the store I became friends with and had a relationship with because I had just literally pushed myself into doing these things that made me uncomfortable, into pushing myself into acquiring the skill of communication, which is something I never had up until that point. And of course, I also started, approaching women and going up to women in class, going up to women at the bar or restaurants or walking on the street. Everywhere I went, I was going up and just striking up conversations with people, and especially women, so I could get that skill down of what it took to communicate with them and actually build some type of attraction with them. And I slowly, just doing this over time, I got really good at it. And again, I started helping guys who kind of noticed that change in me, and it all snowballed from that point.
Justin, I want to say this interview has been excellent so far, and now we're going to enter the lines round. We're just going to ask you a couple of quick questions before we end the show today.
Sounds good, man.
What would you say to someone who's just starting out and going after their dream?
I'd say, I could say a number of things, but the biggest thing I would say is that you can do it no matter how hard it is, no matter how big your dream is, no matter how much of a struggle you're maybe facing or will be facing when you go after that. You can do it. And I say this all the time, it sounds kind of cliche, but you can do anything you set your mind to. You just have to put in the work. You have to realize that it's not going to happen overnight, and you have to keep persisting with it. So having that persistence to keep doing, to keep pushing forward, to keep knocking on doors, to keep trying new things, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, whatever it takes. If you have a goal in mind and you really want to do it, it's going to take a lot of time and it's going to take a lot of effort. And the biggest thing you have to realize right now, is that you have to keep persisting through it, persisting through all the challenges, through all the failures, through all the ups and downs. If you do that and you commit to doing that, there's nothing you can't do.
Oh, that's excellent. I think our audience is really going to resonate with that. But do you happen to have 2 or 3 books that you'd recommend for our audience to read?
Yeah, absolutely, man. So we mentioned the Giving Shy Guys game book. If anyone wants to check that out, it's phenomenal for dating advice. But just kind of other people's books that I love. The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle has been huge in my life. I love that book. How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie is phenomenal as well. One of the classics. For business, I always recommend Ask by Ryan Levesque. Really, really counterintuitive. I love the whole counterintuitive approach. When you think something, it sounds crazy or that's not going to work or that it's, weird or whatever, it doesn't fit your profile of what you thought would work, and then it actually does work. Like a book like Ask will do that for you. It's a business type of book. So those are a few right there.
And Justin, last question of the day. Where can our audience find you?
You can either go to elitemanmagazine.com or the Elite Man podcast on iTunes or Stitcher, and subscribe to the show if you can. If you enjoy the content we have, just check out the show, Elite Man Podcast.
Thanks for listening to Become the Lion. Everything from today's show will be in our show notes on our website. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review on iTunes. Till next week, don't stop grinding.